Yeah, Longfellow's brand new. They just built it.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny how
Yeah.
different money can be utilized different ways? Like,
And they're gonna close Pinewood too.
I didn't see that.
And that's the one that's right next to the Longfellow School, like down the road. There were 3 schools they wanted to shut down. And then they're going to change the way kids go into what buildings they go to too. Save on transportation.
You gotta get pretty creative.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me until later.
What?
Go back. I thought it was like college day at first. I thought it was because Eric had on his Badgers sweatshirts today with his
With the 90, that's, I read, I didn't know.
The first half was so good, and then the second half just fell apart.
Yeah.
He's so great.
It's all about.
I post one to the website, I just didn't add it to the calendar. I'll get it done.
No, I'll get it. It's really slow.
Yeah, that's, glitch. Apparently it's very slow right now.
How big of an area did that affect us?
Yeah, our internet isn't Verizon, so like the Wi-Fi thing is separate, and I don't know if they're being inundated since people don't have data.
Maybe I like your stuff like you.
Bonus work.
I just got to your agenda. You have a access so you can find it.
All right. It is 3:00. We will, thank you everybody for coming. We will call this a regular or special school board meeting, Independent School District 204 to order. We do have a quorum. Kate will be a few minutes late, but she is coming. With that, stand for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. Any second? Thank you, Brandon. Any discussion, anything anybody would like to see changed at that agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. We're on the consent agenda, and just the minutes from our November 20th special meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So.
Thanks, Angie, in a second. Thanks, Patrick. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, the motion carries. And we're on to communications. 4.1, discuss and decide superintendent search timeline, hiring criteria, stakeholder involvement, and procedures. And Barb and Amy, thank you for joining us from MSBA. And I think I'll turn it over to you, but we appreciate you making the trip over today. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for having us again. We're excited to work with you all on your exciting time for your district and looking for your next superintendent. So we'll go ahead and just get started. I know your name tags are out. We've already done introductions the last time that we were here, so I won't put you all through that again. But just as a reminder, I am Amy, and then this is Barb, who's with me today. So just to get started, we're gonna do kind of a brief overview of the process, talk about open meeting law again, and then we'll go through and start setting some dates and selecting the timeline for your search. So to get moving forward, for review of process, the two things that I want to touch on, which I think, again, with having just done the workshop here, I think most of you already are familiar with this because we already talked about it, but just as a reminder, the entirety of the superintendent search does follow under open meeting law, and so all of the times that we get together to discuss this, the interviews, all of that does fall under open meeting law. There is no time that you'll be closing the search, even to discuss contracts for your superintendent as well. So all of it is done in open meeting. And then again, as a reminder, there's a very a balance with that with the Data Practices Act. And so being mindful that you will have private data and just being careful with that information. And again, I'll kind of walk you through that process the whole time, reminding you what things can be shared and what cannot, and at what point, and how we'll get around having those discussions in an open meeting so that everybody knows at the table, knows who we're talking about without, disclosing any private information. So those are kind of the two main pieces about the search. And then also, the other thing I want to talk about is that you, the school board, you are the elected officials, you are the hiring authority for the superintendent. So we just want to make sure that you guys understand that that is your role, is to find the next superintendent. And so just being careful that you're not giving that role away, but making sure that you're being very mindful and you're gathering all of the information you need from all of your stakeholders, and making sure that everybody is on the same page and understands the process. We want to make sure that there is open communication throughout the entire process. Okay, so those are just the kind of the key pieces to start out. We're going to move right into the timeline. I'm going to try to be very mindful of your time because this can get to be, this can start to take a bit of time as we get through discussions, but I want to make sure I'm able to answer any questions that you have at the end as well. When did you say Kate was coming? She should be just a couple minutes. She said she'd be about 10 minutes late. Okay. I just don't want to get too far into the timeline and then move on, but, okay, so if you want to go to page 2, we'll look at the superintendent search timeline, and I'm just going to do kind of a rundown of what all of these meetings are and all of the pieces that are on here, so that you kind of understand what that's going to look like. And then I'll turn it over to Kent to start facilitating a decision on what that you're going to select for these meetings. So as you'll see, we start out with the planning meeting, which is today. And so today you'll be adopting the timeline. We'll review the hiring criteria from the survey that you took. And so that's what today is. And then the next one you'll see, we have a tentative timeline for December 11th through January 7th. And that's when we'll have the stakeholder survey available online, and you'll have hard copies of that available in your district office as well. After that, you'll see that on December 13th, MSBA will facilitate a virtual Q&A session, and that is not considered a board meeting. You do not need to participate. We would recommend actually that you don't, because we want it to be open for stakeholders to ask questions, and sometimes they won't ask questions if they know that board members are on there. However, we want you to all have all of the same information as always. So we do record those, and we post, we will give them to the district to post on your website, so that if there's any questions about the process, you have somewhere where you can direct stakeholders to go and to watch this Q&A. We do it live, and so people can ask questions during the Q&A, and then we'll also take questions ahead of time, because we know not everybody's available at 4 o'clock, which is why we record it and then give it to you to be able to post on your website.
So Amy, are you recommending that board members not attend that live?
we would recommend that you not attend it live, but definitely I'll send it to you when we send it to the, back to the district to post on the website, and we'll recommend that you watch it so that you know all of the information as well, and, what we were able to share, just in case there's a question that comes up that we haven't talked about, so that you also know all of the same information.
And one quick thing on the Q&A as well is, and they mentioned people can submit questions in advance and they're submitted anonymously. We don't know who's asking what. And then during the Q&A, because we are recording and we mute everybody so that no one knows who's asking what questions, they just type them in the chat box. And then we have someone from MSBA monitoring that and repeating the questions back to Amy, which is doing the Q&A. So people feel very, very comfortable asking anything. Some things we obviously need to paraphrase, or if there's meanings shared or something inappropriate, we don't ask those questions. We just want to make sure that people have a chance to ask us so we can tell them what it is. But their names would remain anonymous as well, so that when it is recorded in the district website, everyone can go watch it and no one knows who's asking what. It's really important to understand what we those things. Okay.
Okay, so then moving down the timeline, you can see right now our tentative dates that we have set would be December 19th is when we would post the opening on websites. So we post that through our website, through MASA, the new Minnesota School Jobs website that just started, and then Revelis. And so through the nature of that, through it being posted on Revelis, it does become a national search because it is like a database that's used across the country with different search services through different school board associations. And so, for example, if there's somebody, let's say in Wisconsin, who's looking, they would be able to access and see that the position was open as well, or North Dakota, or across the country as well. So just by virtue of that, it does become a national search. But other than that, it's mostly posted on Minnesota sites. And we also do send out emails through all of our communications to principals and school boards and superintendents. So that would be all done, and then we have a tentative application deadline. And so then we have the next.
Can I touch on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that I think we recommended, because you're out of the gate early, which kudos to the board for doing that, is getting it posted and available for people to start working on their applications before the Christmas holidays. For a lot of administrators, there's a minor pause between Christmas and New Year's sometimes, and there's some downtime, so if they do need to update resumes or they want to throw their hat in the ring, they have a little extra time to do it. So we're purposely suggesting posting this before your holiday break. So people across the state that are interested have a little extra time to pull together their materials for the application. It's still open, of course, into February, but that jump is really nice. So I'm glad that you're having it available sooner.
Okay, and so then during that time, we also will take questions from candidates and we field all of that so that that's not taking up all of your time as well. And then the next meeting, so the next time that we would be gathering together would be for interviews reading. And then at that time, we would also discuss the stakeholder report from that stakeholder survey. So, and then we'll start talking interview questions and interview procedures as well. So that, that'll be the first date that we'll look to solidify tonight. And then you can see February 5th would be the application deadline. The day after that, we start beginning, the MSBA starts conducting our screening and our vetting process. And then the day after that is when board members will begin to review applications. So as you remember, you as board members will have access to all of the application materials so that, I mean, we really believe it's important for you guys to see everybody who's applied and to be able to see all of the materials. And again, we'll come together again on, which is the next meeting, and to select candidates. And that's when we'll discuss candidates. If you remember from our workshop, we're still, all of the candidates are still, the names are private. And so that's when we will discuss them as candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, and we just need to be careful not to give any identifying information out about those candidates. But because again, it is done in open meeting, but you need to discuss who you want to select as your finalists. And so at the end of that night, once you have selected your finalists, I'll name who the selected finalists are in no particular order. And then that's when their names will become public. And then there's a little bit more information that can be released about them. But again, there's still a lot of private data that's included at that time. So it doesn't just become it's not like their full resumes become public data at that time. That is not the case. I was gonna ask, did you have something you wanted to add to that? Okay. No problem. Okay, and so you will be reviewing all of the application materials. And so at that meeting, we'll come with probably a recommended list of who we suggest that you interview. But because you will have seen all of the applications, you may have some questions as to why or why not are you why are you not recommending candidate B? You know, and we will do our best to give you the answer that we can that still follows the Data Practices Act. So at that time is when we'll kind of discuss candidates, and that's why, again, it's important for you to have access to all the materials ahead of time. We will send you the list of who we will be recommending that morning, so you can kind of do a little preliminary, like, oh yeah, that I didn't have that person, or I did have this, or this matches who I was selecting or who I wasn't. So then you can kind of come prepared with any questions that you might have as well.
Can I add something to that as well?
Yep.
So if you have access beginning February 7th, and you'll have access in the cloud, if someone wants hard copies, we work with your HR person to have one set of hard copies in the district office that can't leave the district office. Otherwise, it's all available online 24/7. During that time, between February 7th and the night you determine finalists, we are doing a vetting of the site. So we're talking to the candidates themselves and doing interviews. We are doing social media search, we're talking references. We don't want any of you doing that during that window of time between February 7th and that night of selecting the finalists. Because you can't, for example, call someone in another district and say, hey, what do you think of Jane Doe? You have just let people know that she's applied for your position. So you can review them, but we don't want you to dig and looking for more information on these people. So we know how to do that within bounds of data privacy. But that window of time is for you to simply review everything, think about it, sleep on it, and then we'll bring to you what we've learned through the vetting.
And also then, again, during that time, you will, again, in the district, you may hear, so-and-so, I heard so-and-so applied, or, you know, something like that. And again, as board members, you cannot confirm or deny whether anybody has or has not applied. It's all private data. So if somebody does say something, just, I appreciate your interest. Unfortunately, I cannot confirm or deny that at this time, so. Okay, so then the next, moving on down, we're on page 2, just so that to catch you up. Yeah. Moving down, so then the next time you would meet would be to conduct the first round of interviews. So you can see I have a whole bunch of options here for dates. We would say that you probably want to select 2 dates. We just recommend that right off the bat you reserve 2 dates. Sometimes we don't know what the pool is going to look like, right? Let's say in the first round of interviews, if you have 5, 6 candidates that you want to interview, 5, 6 interviews that each take an hour with a break in between can get to be very long. And so we recommend that you select 2 dates so that if, you know, you might split it up and do 3 one night and 3 another night. You really want to give ample time to consider what their answers were and who you think is going to be the best fit for the district. So we recommend that you do 2 nights. It's also if you have stakeholders who are very interested in the position as well. That's why we recommend 2 evenings so that you're not during contract hours. That way your stakeholders can attend those interviews as well and be able to hear those interviews. Again, you guys are going to do what fits best for your district, and so that's just what we recommend, but it's not required, of course. We have a lot of boards that they say we just want to get them all done in one day, and they'll start at 10 a.m. and go and knock them all out in one day. So again, whatever works best for you, we just recommend that you set 2 aside at this point.
Remind me who was on the board, if any, from the last search? Were you? Just Ken. Okay. Okay. Do you remember if you did them all in one day, Kent, or if they were 2 evenings
There are
or
2 days.
2 days? Okay, so it's, okay, I just want to check on precedent if there's something people are expecting. So, okay, yeah. And you'll notice it's one meeting, actually. It says a special meeting. You just take a recess at the end of the first evening and you recess until the beginning. So it's still one special meeting and one posting. So it's not 2 meetings. Okay, minor point, but just procedurally, we want to have it be one special meeting.
Okay, and then after that first round of interviews, that evening, you'll, after you're finished with the interviews, you will then select who you want to bring back as your round 2 finalists. And so at that time, then we will suggest or recommend that 1 or 2 board members do some of your own reference checking at that time. And we'll, again, I'll walk you through all of this in more detail as we get closer. I don't expect you to remember all of this right off the bat. But we will recommend that you do some additional reference checking at that time. But then you'll meet to have your second round of interviews. Typically, we would say 2 to 3 people for your second round. And we'll talk through more details as we get closer as well on whether you do a building tour or anything like that. Again, that's nothing that needs to be talked about or decided tonight. And then, so that one you could do just one day, because at that time you should be down to 2 to 3, maybe 4 at the most for your final round. And then, so do you guys have, okay, so the next one, we're moving on down again. It says board committee or designate begins negotiations of the employment contract with the loan finalist. Do you guys have a committee? Have you talked about the superintendent contract at this point or not much yet? Okay, so we have a model contract. I think we talked about that at the workshop. We do have a model contract that is put together in collaboration with MASA, and MASA and MSBA both support this. It's something for you to use as a starting point. And I will definitely get that to you guys. We recommend that if you have I don't know if you have a committee that does negotiations or to talk about superintendent contract. Okay. So we would recommend that committee meet ahead of time to kind of work through the contract, set up kind of some parameters, and then bring it to the full board to discuss, so that everybody on the full board has time to answer questions, talk about it, discuss it, and approve it ahead of time, so that then so let's say you decide who you're gonna select that night and you make an offer, that you can go ahead and send the contract to the superintendent either that night or first thing the next day, so that it doesn't hold up the process. Because if you have a committee, if you guys have adopted policy 213, you have to post all of that in open meeting if you're gonna get together as a group to negotiate, just because that can kind of hold up the process. Again, if that's what works best for your district, please go ahead and do that. I'm just giving you best practices, is to be able to move ahead with the parameters that are set by the board ahead of time. And again, if things were to go outside of that, again, you would have to meet again and set that meeting. But just to kind of clarify that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that, at our previous meeting, we said might be helpful for applicants to know ahead of time when posting the position?
So absolutely, it's if you intend to do it as a negotiations committee, they need to hold that date open so that they can meet. Because we can say, for example, if you set second round of interviews for, let's just say you select March 4th. Well, then on March 5th, we would already try to have that posted so that you could try to do that right away that next day. Sometimes it's hard to go through all of it in one day, and so then if you need to come back again, that's when things get pushed back and delayed and changed. Whereas if the parameters are already set, it's easier for the person to just go in and finish those discussions. That's what we recommend. And so in that case, it doesn't need to be a meeting, so they wouldn't necessarily need to know ahead of time. But
You're talking about the fine negotiable details.
Yes.
The other stuff is that, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, good, okay. All right, and then July, well, and then, we'll talk about, if you guys have a set regular meeting shortly after that, we'll get to that as we're working through the timeline, but then you would meet to approve the employment contract. So depending on what dates you select, you wanna probably give it, I don't know, 5 to 7 days maybe before you, come together to meet and approve that final employment contract. So if you have a regular meeting that's kind of coming up, you can add it to that agenda. We would just put that on there now. If you don't, I would suggest finding a special meeting date because you don't want too much time to go between when you come to an agreement and when it's approved. So as we work through these dates, you guys can, then you'll know if you have a regular meeting or not.
So Amy, just so you know, we won't have any of those meetings for next year defined until our January organizational meeting. We approve all the dates for long years. So we won't have any until then.
Okay, so then we'll have you probably look and select a special meeting tentative date. Yeah. Okay, are there any questions on what any of those meetings are or any of that information that I shared yet? Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Kent to kind of walk you guys through facilitating some date selection then.
Thank you for going through this. So I think thank you for highlighting these in yellow.
Yeah.
So we're at the board meetings for interviews for interview training for the board. And Amy's got 6 dates here set out from January 17th through the 31st. Again, these are times that we will set here, but we cannot approve those until our January organizational meeting. But we'll want to hold those in our calendars for those dates, knowing that these are the dates. Okay. So we need to get down to a date for that interview training calendars for people.
I'm out for the 30th.
So, anything else that's a conflict for people?
I'd be out the 31st as well.
Okay, so we've got 3 dates. We've got January 17th, the 22nd, and the 26th. I just want to see.
I'm out.
You're off the 20. The 20.
If it's evening, I could do that.
But if you guys are looking at daytime, I won't be able to meet the 17th. This is also usually about a 2-hour meeting, if that's helpful. It might go less than that because the interview training portion, a lot of that you covered in the workshop already with us. So it might be less than 2 hours. Depending on the stakeholder report, though, and conversations around what we found with that, it still could go that long with this food part.
So we're looking at Monday, January 22nd, or Friday, the 26th.
I think it depends on if we're planning an evening meeting or a daytime
Oh.
meeting. So for the January meeting.
So we could do evening the 17th or daytime the 26th? The 22nd is open day. Oh, the 22nd is open. Yep. Just go with the 22nd, since it's open for everybody.
Monday, the
What,
22nd.
what time of the day are we looking at? Because I have conflicts during the day at different times of that day.
So,
Like, you want to do like a 3 to 5 again? Yeah, okay, and like. Or
3 to 5 on the 22nd.
22nd, 3 to 5.
did you say we should select 2 dates? Or
Not for that, not for the interview training. For the first round of interviews, I would select 2 dates. But not for the interview training. That'll just be a 2-hour meeting, usually at the most. And before you get too
Yeah.
far into the next meeting, I just want to touch on, so the next meeting that's highlighted is when you will do your candidate selection. And that's the night then that their names will become private. And so again, become public, sorry, they were private, they become public that evening. And so we recommend that you try to kind of space it all out within, probably within a week before you do your first, or in, you can do it shorter. So you could, for example, you could select on the 13th, interview the 15th and 16th. We would say that you probably, best practices, you don't want to wait, make your selection on the 13th and then wait until the 29th and 1st to do your interviews, just because that 2 weeks is a really long time for names to be public, for, the candidates themselves. Because if they're already under contract somewhere else, it becomes kind of a precarious position for them in their home district. So we're just trying to be mindful and respectful of that as well. And then again, in between your round 1 and round 2, to try to keep it from, I would say no more than a week if possible. Of course, if that doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's just a recommendation.
What I'm hearing is we're gonna try and pack these pretty tight. Summarize that. So, okay, so just quick clarification, confirmation. We're looking at the board meets for interview training, January 22nd from 3 to 5 p.m. We've got that. So I think we're down to a board to determine the finalists in the interview questions and procedures. And we've got the 13th, 15th, 16th, 20, or 21st. And again, looking at your calendar, trying to know that once we start this, we're going to try and keep these tight.
I am out of the country the 20th and 21st of February.
And again, how long should we allow for this?
So for that one, again, it's typically an hour and a half to 2 hours. It really depends on the discussion. If there's a lot of discussion around candidates, or if there's not, if you all come together and you already have, decided around a certain number. And then again, same thing with the interview questions. If there's a lot of discussion on those questions, that can take longer, but typically an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Are we wanting to stay that 3 to 5 time frame again, or are we going a different time during the day?
For those, could we do evening?
Then I only have the 13th available. I would not be available. Oh no, I could do the 16th. I could do the 13th and 16th if we're talking evenings.
So we know that 20th and 21st is out. And so knowing that, we would have to try and get the 13th and 16th. I don't know what that looks like for people. 13th is a Tuesday, 16th is a Friday.
That's just one meeting also. This is determining finalists, it's not the second round of the firm yet. So if you did go with the 16th, for example, is what Amy said, you would then interview perhaps the 26th, 28th, 29th, so there would be 10 days in there. That's too long.
Is that too much?
You never know. It's not, there's no such thing as too long or too short. It's just a long time for the candidates to have their name floating around out there, but 10 days isn't 2 weeks. So you would preferably want to not put this off until March 1st, for example. If you pick on the 16th, for example, that's a later date, and then the earlier date would be the 26th. So 10 days is not unheard of. Just depends on how much online mischief starts to occur around the candidates' names being public before you actually get to interview them. And these dates aren't in stone. These are dates based around holidays, availability, that sort of thing as well.
Would you be available on the 13th at all?
I could do like one of those days in a week during the day, but not all of them.
Good with the 13th work for us?
But if we did that though, then it will be
A big gap until.
a big gap until the
13th to
26th.
26th.
Unless you can interview 15th and 16th.
Right, we could do the 16th, right?
That's what I thought you were doing when you said 13 and 16 was the first one and then the first round. determine finalists on the 13th and then first round on the 16th, right? That's what I was hearing.
On the 15th and 16th, because you want to.
Yeah, we need 2
first
dates.
round.
We need 2 dates. So we'd be 13th, 15th, and 16th.
I could do that.
That would work best for me.
Okay.
So what
Anybody
time are we doing these things on those dates?
I think we would probably, based on what I'm hearing, have to do it evening.
Anytime after 3.
I'm flexible.
Evening is tough for you.
I can do 3.
3 o'clock. So stay at 3. Kate?
Uh-huh.
Randy?
The 15th and 16th though, should we do it later? Because you said outside of contract hours.
What time are your contract hours typically?
Till 3:30.
3:30. I would recommend maybe starting at 3:45 or 4, so that if you have stakeholders in the district, if they
Four.
can't attend the
Four.
interviews.
4?
Okay.
4 for all of them?
Or from,
Just try and stay consistent.
Yeah, I think it'd be easy.
okay.
So we're doing 4 p.m. on the 13th for finalists. And then the first round of interviews will be the 15th and 16th, also at 4 p.m.
If you have 3 each night,
Yeah.
do you want to start earlier? Are you able to start earlier? Or don't you can't?
Especially if those candidates, if they're driving someplace, they need to drive.
And it'll be a snow day, you know.
And 4 would be for 3 candidates, and you do, we're close to an hour and a
You'd
half.
be done at 7:30. Three that night, if you start at 4. You got an interview at 4, 5:15, 6:30, and at 7:30, everybody goes home. And the next night's the same thing, except at 7:30, you take a half-hour break to allow MSBA to consolidate your evaluation forms, and you start deliberating at 8 o'clock about who to bring back for round 2. And usually, in the first round, if you have 5 or 6, there's usually a clear 2 or 3 that bubble up that you usually can decide fairly easily to bring back. So it's not necessarily late night.
Yeah, that would go quick. Is an hour, is that basically what you recommend or what?
For deliberations,
No, just for
Yes.
the interview itself.
an hour and then 15
I know
minute
we've
break.
done administrator interviews up to 2 hours. I just curious what, maybe it would be longer for the final round.
So if you're starting at 4 doesn't put you too far. I mean, you're done at 7:30 the first night, and you're probably done at 8:39, 9:30. Not early this morning. We see them a lot later. But it's up to you. Okay.
And then we would go, essentially, we would go from the 16th, before we did those final interviews, then we would be at the 26th, and it would be the earliest, so it'd be 10 days.
I think that's okay for 2 or 3 people usually, right? So it's,
You've narrowed down to 2 to 3.
there's less initiative with 2 or 3 people. And they've interviewed once, people know who they are. Gives time for whoever on the board is going to be checking those references, a little extra time. So, yeah.
13th, 15th, and 16th, all at 4 o'clock.
Take us with you.
Us too.
13 and 16, all at 4 o'clock, but 15 and 16 will be locked out until 9.
Yep.
7:30 the first nap. Yeah. Right, and then, yeah.
That one seemed.
To circle up to January 22nd, did you want to start that at 4 o'clock also, or do you just want to stay at 3? That 2-hour meeting on the 22nd? 3? So 3, 4.
What is the one on the 22nd for? Oh, wait, the January one?
That's our interview 3.
Yeah.
3? Okay.
Okay, so we've got those, so now we're looking at second round of interviews, and we're looking at one night. 20th and 21st are out, so sometime after that, and again, probably trying to keep closer to 26, since we're already 10 days out.
The 26th.
I will be out until 28th.
You won't be there the 28th,
I'll be out until,
so 29th is the first,
no, I'm sorry, home the 28th.
so you could do the 28th? So what's the 28th? So Wednesday, what's it look like?
Yeah, we're gonna have to make that work because I'm out the 29th and 1st.
28th, so the question is, what time?
I could do 4 again, so that's the earliest I could do.
Or works if it works for.
4 is fine for me. Wednesday. 4 p.m. Now, are we looking at probably an hour and a half for each one of those then? Is that what we're looking at?
So typically for round 2, we do again, typically do a 1-hour interview again. And then typically we'll have like fewer questions because they're a little bit more in depth. That's typically how it goes. So if you want to have longer interviews, you can, but usually we do the 1 hour. Sometimes they'll do like a building tour earlier in the day, and then they may meet with some of the administration team or something like that. Sometimes those things happen and that all gets arranged earlier in the day, but the board isn't a part of that, so that doesn't have to be part of your discussion tonight. We'll figure that
We
out
can
later.
figure it out. Yeah, and 4 o'clock will leave us enough time to do whatever we want. Okay. So the February 28th will be the second round of interviews. And then we have, okay, so Amy talked a little bit about the model contract, and we need to decide if that makes sense for this district to meet ahead of time, set the parameters for that model contract, and then designate somebody to have that conversation. Thoughts on that? Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, then what we'll do is we'll meet ahead of time, work through that model contract, set some parameters, and designate somebody to go do that.
Is it okay then on here, on an edit as well, I mean, we're kind of making structure, to have say board designee begins negotiations, because you will have already the negotiations committee or whatever, we'll talk it. So then I'm gonna take out all of that red lighting underneath, red writing. Time to be determined special meeting if it's a committee, that's gonna just be removed. That's a really good choice, because by now you are into March 1st, which is February 29th. That's the end of February, you're in the height of search season, so I think you would want to start negotiating as soon as possible. That night or the next morning, whoever your designee is, just shoot the contract out and say, hey, here's the starting point, let's talk today, versus having to arrange. I think that'll save you a lot of time.
Do you want to figure out a figure really quick, because it's just randomly?
Can you get determined at the org meeting in January?
Well, and because we can't set any dates until organization meeting.
And sometimes you set a time and date and the candidate has a conflict.
Oh, sure.
So if your lone finalist can't make it at 3 o'clock the next day, even if we let them know that's when it is, sometimes you're like, I'm on an airplane that, I mean, sometimes they just can't meet. Or can defer a candidate.
Okay. So then, yeah, and that board meets to approve the employee's contract. Again, it's not, we can't set that until,
That's okay.
I don't even think we can.
We can leave that as March TBD for now.
Board likely, will probably be doing that first week of March, right?
Is that Monday?
What's the date of that?
Fourth.
Fourth?
Probably a special meeting.
You might have a
That
contract
time,
for
typically
4
does.
days.
It's possible.
That'd be awesome, actually, to do that on that. If that's gonna be your, if you historically keep the same regular meeting dates, or
Try.
mix it up every year.
No, we tried.
Okay.
I've got a draft of them all already.
Would you like us to put March 4th regular meeting,
It'd be a
in there as a
special meeting, I
placeholder?
think, but yes.
So then candidates know when it could be approved anyway. And then if you have to change it, you can change it with obviously the 3 days notice. In January, if you're changing to the March date, that's fine, we'll just update the timeline. March 4th. Yep.
So March 4 is the committee meeting.
It's
It's
gonna
a
be
special.
Oh, it's a
So it'll be a
special.
6 p.m. start. How long did you say to book block for final interviews? 2 hours?
On the, like, the room.
The 28th, no, the length of the meeting. How long?
That's how long deliberations go.
I thought you decided and I just missed it.
Not for the
No.
whole meeting, yeah.
Oh,
Just
okay.
each interview again is about an hour long, and then a break between, and then a break between.
So
And
like
it, again, it'll
49,
depend on if there's 2 finalists or 3 finalists or, I don't know.
I don't think
If you vote 4 to
somebody-
9 now and they go past 9, is that violating any kind of posting requirement? We usually just put the starting time of meetings, because we usually we went with boards till 1 AM sometimes, just they have 2 such strong candidates they can't decide, so they adjourn till that day.
It doesn't, but it gives them an idea when they look at their calendar that they're not gonna do anything else that night.
Yeah, yeah, that is not a 1 hour in and out.
And there's, the full board would not have to be present the night of March 4th, because I will be out of the country.
Monday before. Which we can find out.
All right,
Good.
I think,
Sometimes these timelines take an hour and a half, so thanks for bringing your calendars, everyone else.
That's the hardest part of this meeting, so congratulations, we made it through. Okay, so if you can go ahead and turn to the next page, you'll see, we have the draft. The draft vacancy brochure. So if you can kind of look through the left-handed side, if there was anything from the district that you think is really missing that needs to be there, or the right-hand side that has like the section about the committee or the communities. Do you see anything that really is missing or should be added? And again, thank you, Carlin, for your work on helping compile these data points and the information, so.
For me, I noticed 2 things. Comment, pride, we always capitalize the M in comment because it stands for Kasson-Mantorville.
Nice. I like that, okay.
And then the second to last bullet on the left side, I think that we should add students because we do have a student wellness committee as well. So
It looks
our
like there's a
wellness,
space for it already.
so our wellness committee consists of committee members, students, administration staff, and parents.
Okay. Yep, I see that. There's space for it.
Just put students right in there.
Yeah.
Like you do.
Yeah, that was going.
Kate's on it.
We knew that was missing. Okay, thank you. Any other additions or edits or changes to that? And of course, the timeline will be updated now that we have the other dates in here as well, so. Okay, all right, and then if you want to turn to the next page, thank you everybody for taking that hiring criteria survey. So these were the items that rose to the top, and I have to say this was probably the most consistent survey among board members that I have ever seen, and I do all of our vacancy brochures, so you guys were really on the same page kind of across the board. Of course, there was a few outlying, pieces that didn't have as many, but there was a lot of consistency among you all, so that was really interesting to see, so congrats on that as well. But are you seeing anything that you really feel, if you look at the very next page, you can see what the hiring criteria survey had, so if there was something in there that you really feel strongly needs to be added, or if there's any wording that you want changed, if you want anything else updated, I just want to make sure that it fits Kasson-Mantorville.
Do we have to make a decision on previous superintendent experience?
Yes, so what I put in there is just kind of what I come to from seeing that 3 of you said yes and 4 of you said no. And so typically then we would say that it's preferred but not required. You guys can decide if you just want to say it's not required or if you want to say it is required. So I guess that's kind of up to you guys, how you want that worded on the brochure.
You can tally out, right?
Oh, yeah, that'll come out. That doesn't stay on there. That's just for a reminder to talk about that.
I think because it's so close to a 50-50 vote, it should be experience preferred but not required, so not in any one direction.
I appreciate that.
So we will leave that. Any other comments for that leadership the part on the left? Okay. All right, so then for the salary and benefits piece, if you want to skip to 2 pages further, I sent the different language options. If you guys want to talk through how you want it on the brochure. Sometimes it's nice to have some sort of a base for them to go off of. I appreciate that you guys are with an interim superintendent. It's not a normal contract per se, so you may not be able to do that as much. Sometimes it's nice to have an idea. You don't want to have somebody come in, that you would be way off from. If they have an idea, it's kind of helpful. It's not required. And the other thing that sometimes I caution is to not put a cap per se, because if it comes down to $1,000 to have the right person, you don't want to cap it and then have to then go back and talk about that. So you'll set those parameters when you have your contract discussion. Is kind of how we look at it. But I'm going to let you guys decide how you want to order it in the brochure.
So Amy, so what I'm hearing you say is that your recommendation almost aligns with number 2. Like you're recommending that we put some sort of monetary figure in there with no cap, and then it's negotiable.
I would say, yeah, I would say 1 or 2 are probably the ones that are used the most often. Some people will do the 4 because they just don't want any mention, but I would say what typically ends up being most common is number 1, because it's just based on that. This is what the current contract is, right? Go ahead.
So, because of what you just said though, it might be better to say the previous superintendent's base salary for 22-23 was.
Right, instead of the current.
And
Although,
because they're
yeah, the contract was issued, so you would have dollar amount. It just, the contractual amount for 23-24 is or was, I don't want to say anything to do that, so it's not the interim saying like you said.
was because we have a different contract.
Yeah.
with the
What if we do
interim.
the interim superintendent's base salary for the year is?
That's usually not a fair apples to apples.
Then I think. we
Interim
should do the
superintendents
second one.
don't necessarily need health insurance, and so they're
Yeah.
sometimes their salary is really high in lieu of benefits, and then a person's eyes light up and they think that salary is attainable for them when they don't have any experience. Dr. Thompson had.
Sure.
So interim contracts are a good.
Could we do the first, add the sentence about the benefits package into the second one?
Do whatever makes sense.
Does that make sense to you guys? So use the language of the first sentence of the second one, a competitive compensation, and, actually, no, I just wanted to make sure the benefits part was in there.
But are we tied with our minimum salary due to other positions in our district currently? We would have to pay more than one of the admin.
Superintendent
I
contracts.
think we're getting to the dollar figure later, right? We have a baseline comparison. You're just understanding what language we want to choose from, right?
We would need to know what to put in the vacancy brochure. So if you're gonna put a number, I would need to know that, well, within the next couple of days, because it will go into the posting. So that, we would need to know what that number would be if you're gonna have a number in there.
So Amy, are you saying that you might be tied by an agreement, kind of contractual agreement with administrators, that you can't exceed a certain amount or something?
Well, it would have to be more than that, right?
Right.
They're an at-will employee, and so typically the superintendent's contract is completely separate from and unrelated to anyone else who's in any kind of meeting or. So it's at-will,
So they could make less than what other admin.
I believe so, unless you have something that I'm not aware of in your language.
And it could be.
I just felt like the governor's rule on that, but.
That used to be, yes, that doesn't apply to superintendents anymore. Or you could make more than a certain amount, or up to the governor's amount, yeah, that's gone away. Yeah, good question.
I like number 2 as well. Number 1 is difficult for us in a situation where we have an interim and it's not, especially that contract was prorated based on the partial year worked. And so I agree that number 2 is probably the best fit for us.
Yeah, I think too, because Mark was here for so long, his salary was a lot more, so someone coming in without experience might be offended if we put his contract numbers
Right.
and then what we offer someone.
So then, who do I contact to find out what the minimum, the number that you'll put in there? Who do I follow up with about that?
You've got it outlined right in the next section. I had reached out to Amy today, and I apologize that they should have done that last week, and had asked if we could also receive data for some of the other section 1 4A schools that aren't included in here, which was like Albert Lee, Austin, and Faribault, just so that we're comparing other like-sized school districts as well.
Yeah, and I can get that information. It may take up to about a week, but I'll send that all to you so that you have that added to that, to this chart, So. Yeah, there was 3, right, that you just sent me today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Pine Island just hired their superintendent this past year, right? Because before that, I think Tammy actually was the highest paid superintendent in HML. So they had a cost savings when they hired a new superintendent, which I'm assuming comes probably with different level of experience.
And I don't know if she's an interim or superintendent.
She's interim. She's interim.
Interim? Okay. So that Payan is interim superintendent, correct?
Which is why there's no health insurance listed. Makes sense.
So when do we need to come up with that number tonight, or do we need to, we can?
Well-
I think we can.
It'd be nice to know how much it
Minimum?
costs.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a little bit of time because we're not actually posting it until December 19th. So I would just obviously need to know in enough time to get it updated in the brochure before we send it out to all of the sites that we advertise it on, and to get it to the district in time to post it as well.
I think it'd be appropriate for our finance committee to review the numbers based on the comparison of the 3 additional school districts.
Sounds good. Do you know when they meet again?
We can meet anytime.
We can meet
Is that-
that way.
An okay ask or no?
That's fine.
Perfect.
So we'll.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no, that sounds good.
Once we have that information, then we'll schedule a meeting, and then we'll get that information back to you.
That sounds good. That works for me. So, I will be updating the brochure with all of the information that we've talked about, and I'll send it all to you for final approval. But I'll just leave that number Xed out for now so that it actually looks like how this looks. Just so that everything else, everybody has time to finalize and look at ahead of time. And then once that final number comes in, I'll let you guys all know so that everybody knows. Before it actually gets posted then. But that's why I don't still have access when I send it to you in the next few days or the next week. Okay, so the next.
Are we still on this one here?
Okay, did you have anything else to talk about on that one?
Financial highlights and stuff, and these numbers and stuff, they just pulled off the last file.
I got them from Bob.
But I guess this is because of the work, you know, obviously our revenue ultimately exceeds our expenditures and stuff, but this is probably due to, I'm guessing the house and the timing of the sale and everything, and why our
I would
expenditures
imagine.
exceed our revenue.
Screenshot.
Is that right, Bob?
Yes.
Is that something that we leave on
Do you
there
think
like
we
that?
should
I know, I was gonna say,
update
is that
that?
a concern? Somebody seeing that our expenditures are higher than our valid.
we take a new screenshot because the house has been sold now? Could we use that data? Is that appropriate?
Anything before the 19th of December, that's when it goes public, so you can certainly update it.
Crunch those numbers, Bob?
It's
Yeah.
$400,000,
That makes sense.
right?
Good catch.
Thank you.
That's a great catch, because candidates look very closely at each other.
Yeah. We will ask.
Got my notes there, follow up on that one too. Okay. Anything else before we conclude with the vacancy roster? Okay. So skipping back ahead, since we've already kind of done a few of these, we kind of mentioned this already, but just kind of comparable districts, you can see that. And so I'll be adding those 3 in there. Do you want me to get from what Mark's contract was gonna be for 23, 24 to just add in as a line so that you guys can kind of compare? Or do you don't want that in there? Would that be helpful for you to have it in there or not at all? No? Okay. Okay, I won't then, but I'll get the other 3 added in and I'll send it to you once we have collected all that information. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna talk a little bit about the stakeholder input. So, the online stakeholder survey, online and available in hard copy in the district office. Again, that's just to make it equitable for everybody to be able to take it. Some people don't want to, or they refuse to do certain things online. And so we want to make sure that you have hard copies available in the district office, or if there's certain places in the community that you think would be good places to have them where stakeholders can sit down and fill them out and hand them back in. Somebody would want to deliver them and then pick them up at the end of the time to get them scanned over to us. But do you guys have anywhere specifically in the community that you would want them to be, or just in the district office? Or sometimes people will do like at every school building, or different things like that. So
Does anyone ever do at the library?
yes, yep, we have had some do them at the library. If you think that's a great, yeah, definitely.
I was just thinking about our older generation who maybe don't have a strong connection to the school district, but very much are voting members of our community.
Right. Yeah, it's
How
important.
do we reach them in particular?
Absolutely. So I'll send to Carlin, I'll send some communications about the stakeholder survey. And then she can, I have like some different ideas or avenues where she can send it out to. Obviously, you're gonna do an email to everybody in the district. But sometimes they'll put it in the paper or on the radio, or sometimes there's a public TV station that can put information about it as well.
On the workshop.
Oh yeah, talked about the Rochester paper, social media, and TV stations as well. So just getting the word out, and then we would definitely recommend that all of you share that information as well and talk to all of your stakeholders. Asking them to fill out the survey is really important.
So I have a question. Since the responses to that survey are all anonymous, do we know if we're getting our stakeholders or other people are just thrown in? So I was curious.
No one can take the survey from the same email address. So once you fill it out from a Gmail address, that IP address, am I talking too high tech for me? Probably am, but no one can take it again from that. If they choose to use a different email address and take it a second time, great. Hard copies, you really can't. I trust people. I trust their ethics and their interest in this search. And even so, if for some reason someone wanted to fill it out 10 times, it's unfortunate. And yet if there are 400 responses or 500 responses, it gets vetted by the majority that are doing the survey the way it's intended. Just can't.
Have other communities ever done like coffee shops where
We've done that.
Church bulletin.
Yeah, Church bulletins,
Right.
yeah. However, people here, communicate. There's not a senior center in KM anywhere.
There's in Vanderbilt,
There's one.
Vanderbilt?
but
Yes, that, might be a lot of, yeah.
Tell the senior living is a Prairie,
Okay, no.
Prairie Meadows. That's pretty big.
Our lines, club members, right, they're very invested in the school district, they might not see a survey link. Like,
Right.
where do they congregate, right, and how to make sure we get their input.
We want one at this city as well.
So.
Did I hear, was it called Prairie Meadows? Prairie Meadows, city office, two of them. Yeah, city offices. Okay. The district office. And did you library?
Or the library. I think it'd be easy to put one at the schools too,
I think so.
because some people don't know where the district office is, even though it's right here.
Okay, that sounds good. And then, okay, and then if you guys want to just kind of take a look at the survey, the first question is kind of the one that I really want you to look at. Does this sound like the right stakeholder groups? So everybody is asked to just self-identify which stakeholder group they are. We understand that there's people who are in multiple, like I may be a teacher and a parent. And so we're asking them to put their hat on, mark what they're taking, which hat they're wearing when they're taking the survey. Does that make sense? And then responding to it. I just want to make sure that these sound like the right groups. Are any missing or any that need to be changed? Okay. And then again, just to confirm English and Spanish, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And like, you can see like the second page of the survey, it's apples to apples with the hiring criteria survey that you took. So then you can see if you're in alignment with your community stakeholders or if there is not alignment. And we'll bring that all to you during that stakeholder report meeting, so that you can see, sometimes there'll be a different priority for your stakeholders, and we'll talk about that when you're doing your hiring, or when you select your candidates. We'll talk about that during the interview questions that are created. So sometimes based off of the stakeholder feedback, we'll determine that, they think that there's more interest in something that maybe you guys didn't select. And so I'll come prepared with questions kind of around those areas as well to make sure that the stakeholder feedback is being heard throughout the search. So it's really important that we get the word out about that. And then also, in addition to the stakeholder survey, we'd also like to meet with Barb and I, or myself or Barb, or both of us. We'd like to meet with your administrative team and then possibly the heads of your bargaining units, so that we can answer questions, so that we can give them information, and then so that we can ask for their help. And so I just want to make sure everybody is okay with us doing that. Okay. And we'll probably be looking to do that. I'm gonna go back to the timeline, hold on. Yeah, probably sometime within the next week and a half. Would be when I'd be looking to do that, next week and a half to 2 weeks. Okay, so you can skip through all of the rest of the stakeholder survey. We just wanted to give it to you so that you are aware of all of the questions that we'll be asking. As you can see, we do have some of that information in the beginning where it's kind of check this, what are your choices? We also ask if they believe it's important that the superintendent have experience or not. So both of the pieces that we ask you ahead of time, we ask the stakeholders as well. And then there's also open-ended questions, and there's no character limit. It gives the community and stakeholders an opportunity to share with you what they're looking for in the next superintendent. And we ask, like I said, there's no character limits. Again, we'll make sure that it's summarized and that if there is any information in there that would violate like data practices or anything like that, that gets removed before you can see that, so. Okay, so I think we kind of already talked about, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the role of the current superintendent, which I think we've already determined at the last one. So I'm confirming that that Dr. Thompson will not be a part of the superintendent search. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we also would like to know who the school board spokesperson is. We would ask that you guys make a decision who that is, just because sometimes we'll have the media reach out to us and we want to also know where we can direct them. We would like to have one spokesperson for the school board. Typically, it's the board chair, not always the case.
I think that's appropriate. On the board chair.
I'm in favor of
Are you okay with that one?
that. Yeah, sure.
And then also, an in-district contact person, I've been working with Carlin. I just want to confirm that that is who I should continue to work with through most of the information communications, when we're sending stuff out about the stakeholders and that sort of thing. I just want to make sure that that is correct and who I should be working with. And is she okay with it?
I am.
Okay. Okay, so then we're going to talk about some additional possible services. So if you go to this one that it looks like this, and it talks about stakeholder input. Okay, so we talked about the survey, and then the informational Q&A session. Again, that's the one that we'll do that with the public. We'll do it live. It's a Zoom meeting. We'll record it, give it to the district for you guys to post on the website. And that's that one. And then there are opportunities for input forum, but we'll talk about that after the stakeholder report summary. So you don't need to make any decisions on those at this time. We just want you to have that information. The other piece is the a la carte option. Sometimes, and I think we talked about this in the workshop as well, about doing focus groups and whether or not you want to do focus groups. In the past, that was kind of traditional methodology, was to do focus groups. We have found through the survey that you get a much larger response from your community doing the survey. And that, a lot of times people will come to a focus group, but you'll only hear from one or two people. And that was one of the things that was learned through the pandemic, because they were, for example, you'd have we would do them online at that time, and you would have, by the end of the focus group, you'd only heard from one person, right? And so you might have 30 people on, but they're not giving their input. And that's the whole idea behind focus groups, which is why the stakeholder survey has become so popular as the way to receive the most information from your community and your stakeholders, from staff. And because it is anonymous, they're able to be completely honest in that. Whereas, again, in focus groups, you don't always have that, but it is important to some communities that they do that. So we want to give that option to you. So again, if you want to do focus groups, we're happy to do them. And if you know there is an extra fee to do that, which is in the red down below. So I'll let you guys decide if you want to do focus groups or not.
Okay, on your expertise, they say. I guess that's my feedback.
I think we have a pretty comprehensive list of where the survey will be available as well.
Okay, so no focus groups. Okay, and then the next page, you'll see the summary of search services. And you'll see, so there's a few meetings that have red asterisks by them, and those are typically I shouldn't say typically, those can be done via Zoom, where I would connect with you guys via Zoom for that meeting. I can do them in person if you prefer. We're happy to do them, and it's an extra cost of $300 if you'd like me to come in person for just those two. All of the rest of the meetings I will be in person for sure, like all of the interviews. I'm here, if Barb's available, she'll also be coming as well, for the interviews and, this one.
I don't have a preference whether it's a Zoom call or you're here in person for those two meetings.
So the two meetings, just to clarify, it's the interview training meeting. And then that's also when we discuss the stakeholder report. And then we'll begin talking about interview questions. And then the second meeting would be,
Then I guess we request you do them in person, please.
Amy, there's two others that have black asterisks, so those double black asterisks, so those are already in person. The one is the host and online informational, so that's already virtual. It's the third bullet point, and then the last bullet point.
so yes, because the informational, the Q&A, that one is it's a virtual meeting, just so that all the stakeholders can zoom in and do that one. So that one is for sure. And then the last one we say is, that one's also a virtual meeting. If I can make it, I will automatically come in person without it being an extra fee. I try to do that one in person because it's really important for the transition for the new superintendent with the school board. So usually if there's no weather problems, I come in person. So that's why I don't put that one in red. So, it's important for me to be here in person for that one as well, as I can make that work, so.
And that Q&A is December 13th, that the board, you recommend the board doesn't go to it, right?
Correct, yeah, for that earlier one.
A transition workshop will probably be in September, October. The weather should be fine.
Yeah,
Let's
Yeah.
hope.
yeah,
We want the new superintendent to have been here for at least a month or so to get their feet under them. And then the transition workshop talks about those expectations for the first year, performance evaluation processes you're gonna use, all of that stuff. So within the first 6 months for sure, don't let it slide into 2025, that's too long. But in those first 6 months, Amy will reach out and schedule it.
Okay, so if you want to flip to the next page, the national advertising sites. So you can take a look at what those, and again, like I mentioned, it is technically by virtue of being in Revelis, which is our, our application system that we use to collect all of the applications. By virtue of that, it is a national search. But if you have a desire to post on any of these additional national advertising sites, here's some of those options and what those costs are. And I'll let you guys decide about whether or not you want to do the national advertising.
How many school districts are drawing candidates from like outside the upper Midwest?
So last year, we had a few out-of-state applicants, but most of them were just nearby, and they saw it through the Revelis system. So we do have, I think there was a handful that did national advertising last
And
year.
it's usually the larger districts
Yeah.
in metro.
Yeah.
They like to post nationally, and word of mouth is the best advertisement, and word is out. This is at cost, we don't ever mark it up. If you, for example, had a community within your community that was marginalized, and so we had districts work with us that are very near native populations and want to advertise on the National Indian Education Association. So if you're trying to reach a diverse pool based on your communities, then maybe. Otherwise, we tend to think it's an unnecessary expense. Someone who wants to move to Minnesota either has former work here, they've worked here, or they have family members here, or they're returning after something. Very rarely does someone say, I'm gonna live in Minnesota for a job and move from Texas to Minnesota to work. I mean, it's rare. There's a reason they come. And they'll go to MSB's website. They look at our website from out of state all the time. And they will see on their notes as well. So we don't think you need it, but it's a board decision. If you want to advertise national, feel free.
Okay, and then the last one to talk about is right underneath that national advertising is the background checks piece. So every employee that's hired in the school district has a background check done, right? You guys have a standard policy that you do a standard background check. And so they will be background checked. So I don't want to confuse you and think that they wouldn't. This is an optional additional service where they do, they'll actually go through and check and verify employment history and educational history as well. So it's like a more in-depth background check. So that's an option for you as well. I would say for the most part, I think most boards decide if they're gonna do it, they do it on just the final candidate. And then like the motion would be upon approval of sorry, I don't have the wording right in front of me, like the successful passing of a background check or to the board's, agreement of. So that would be where it's usually done. Sometimes they'll want to do it on the last, like the final candidates. Now you guys do have that gap in time between your round 1 interviews and round 2 interviews. So you could do the background check on your final candidates and have that information back before round 2 if you want to do that. Again, it's totally a board decision if you want to do that and have that information beforehand or not.
Can we make that decision at a later point?
But otherwise, this would be above and beyond our normal.
Correct. This is above and beyond that. Yep.
I feel like what you hear about is often the professor who actually never graduated college. And that type of thing, you always hear about that on the news because it's so rare, but then you never want to be the ones with the news story.
Yeah, you can wait and decide on
I
that.
would be in favor of doing a background check on our final candidate, making sure we're crossing our i's and dotting our i's for our community. And
Okay, I put in a final candidate, but I will check back with you guys when we get further in the process, when we get closer. Okay, guys, we're almost done. Last page of the packet. So in Revelis, in the application system, we can ask 2 custom questions. And so if you guys can, I don't know if you took the time to think ahead of time about what items you might want addressed in the application. Keeping in mind, of course, some of these are better to be maybe asked in an interview depending on your district. And so thinking through what would you want to use as a screening question when you're reading about them right off the bat. And just being mindful that, again, it's an application question. And we'll come with other ideas for interview questions. But if there's one that you really like, let me know and I'll make a note to include it when we're talking interview questions.
I thought number 5 was really important. I also thought 6 and 10 were also really important.
Number 2 is important too. My only thing on that, I do really like the question, but then it's going to be relevant to our district, but is that going to give a message that we might not be in a great place and will that deter people from completing? Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, which one do you need?
Number 2.
That is a good point. And you could definitely use this for maybe further down in the process. Maybe bring this to round 1 or even potentially round 2. If that's information that you really want to gather about your finalists, that might be something to bring back maybe in round 2.
We did have a district along those lines. The biggest fire were finances, and they suggested that one of the questions in the application be, how would you aid a district that is heading into statutory operating debt? And we counsel them that might scare off some candidates. So you want to be transparent with candidates so they know what's going on, you know, and yet that one question to start with was, I chose not to do it for exactly what you said.
Number 5 maybe, and still, it's not about, it's still so specific. We're just talking school district finances more in general.
I think number 12 would be good too. I was listening to a podcast that talked about a lot of interviews who discussed, like, tell me a time when and tell me a time when. But part of answering those questions is pulling out their leadership style, how they described it, what their role was in it, how they actually used an administrative team or a school board or whatever team that they were a part of at the time.
And then with the screening questions, it's these higher level, you know, thoughts, you know, leadership style, things like that. Not getting down to the nitty gritty of like, how would you feel? You know, very specific cause or
Absolutely, and you don't have to pick these questions. If there's something else that better fits that you want to know, we can customize them for you, how they fit your district. So don't feel like if these don't sound like what you need to know or learn about, and there's something else that's more important, please share that and let's use that. But I just want you to know you have options.
We do like 10 and 12.
yeah. I don't know if those are at the top of my head.
10 and 12.
I think all of this would be. Right, like all the questions are great questions.
But screening are a little different, you know, those are.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I like 12. Patrick,
No,
you like 12?
I like 12 too, because you can't have a canned response or cookie cutter response. You have to be able to draw from your experiences. So I kind of feel like that's a great way for us to get to know them right off the bat.
That's more personal.
And it will give a ton of information.
Mark, thoughts? 10 and 12 it is?
Okay. Perfect. I mean,
Can we do it?
look at this, you guys. Well done. What questions do you have?
Nobody has a question?
I always say we kind of ask as we go along, so.
Well,
Well,
I
we've
also
got
think
your-
too, there's a lot of things that like wondering about, but that comes in the future. That'll come in January. That will come after the December 13th.
within the
So-
context of the process.
Right, so it's,
Right.
you know, if you don't want to get too far ahead.
Please ask, I mean, you have contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have something.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime that you guys have any questions about any part of this, please reach out to me. And please share it with your stakeholders as well. My phone number is right on the bottom of the stakeholder survey if you didn't notice it. And also, it's in the vacancy brochure as well, my email and my phone number. We are happy to answer questions along the entire process to make sure that everybody has the right information. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and if anybody's asking questions, you can direct them right to me. I'm happy to answer any questions about the whole process. Most definitely. But I will then probably, do you want me to reach out to Carlin to talk through, maybe between the two of you for the bargaining units and the administrative team for those meetings?
Yeah.
And that you can help me
Schedule.
line those up and get those scheduled?
We've usually done those via Zoom, so people can hop on a computer wherever they are at the time that's designated, so no one has to sort of gather in a room, to make it easier on people. I think that would be effective here and so. Okay, that would be perfect.
Yeah, we'd still offer a room for people who wanted to be in it.
Got
But
it.
Okay, well, that's all I have for you guys, unless you have any more questions.
Thanks so much for making it.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be here today.
Thanks for coming down. Yes, well, thank you. We just have informational items. Next special school board meeting, 6 PM Monday, December 4th, district office meeting room. And the next regular school board meeting is December 18th here in the community forum.
The fourth, we're still keeping our number, there was some talk about maybe.
Yeah. I don't know
I
if
was thinking we could
talked
decide tonight if we need, I can certainly put stuff on an agenda. But there's
Is there anything
nothing,
we don't know
there's
that,
nothing
Yeah, I would
pressing.
rather not.
Does that just mean that our late meeting is gonna be longer? That's what
December
it
will
seems
be
like
long
it's
anyway.
already
Well,
3 hours to
It's
begin
true
with.
with
Would you pick
taxation,
anything off?
So we call the meeting to order at 6 anyways on the 18th. And if there's nobody to speak to truth and taxation, we can dive into the agenda sooner.
and we already had the high school PLC, which typically in the past we've had that done in December
Yeah, we
as well.
left off the PLC presentation for December. Yeah. But that is usually not on there too, so that's on. Shouldn't be too bad.
So Carlin, you want me to have a conversation with Dr. Thompson on that?
He told me to bring back whatever you decided, because
Okay,
he
then
was
we
fine
decided.
canceling it.
Perfect.
So,
Awesome.
All right, so back to informational. We do not have a special board meeting in December at this point. We have just a regular school board meeting, 7 PM, December 18th, high school reform room here. Anything else before
December
we,
18th, is that six, though?
7?
It's at 6, we'll call to order at 6, and the first agenda item is anyone who wants to publicly
Oh.
speak
For the
to truth and
truth
taxation.
and taxation, sorry, yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
A motion.
Thank you, Kate, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Angie. Any just final thing before we adjourn? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Adjourn, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Abby and team.